Hello, everyone, and welcome to Longwood Gardens. My name is Kelly Saracino. I'm a distance educator at Longwood Gardens, Kennett Square, Pennsylvania, one of the great gardens of the world. We're together today to learn a little bit more about carnivorous plants. This, my favorite, the Venus flytrap. But I'm going to encourage you right now to pause, grab a piece of paper, a pencil, because I know as we go through this lesson today, you are going to have lots of questions for me, and I'm going to have my email ready for you at the end of the lesson. I'd love to hear your questions, your comments, your thoughts, any questions about carnivorous plants, Longwood Gardens, or plants in general. We could be email pen pals. So hopefully you have that piece of paper, pencil by now. Let's get started with our carnivorous plants lesson. We're going to start off by asking the question, what do plants need to survive? Then we're going to learn what an adaptation is and then focus on adaptations of carnivorous plants. I know you know the answer to the first question, what do plants need to survive? We know we put a seed in the soil, and for germination to happen, we need to give it water and sunlight. Our plants need air. Our plants need nutrients. They need a lot of the same things that humans need in order to survive. But think about this. What if a plant's leaves could not reach sunlight? We know that's so important for photosynthesis, for the plant to be able to make its own food. What if a plant's roots couldn't reach any water or food? What's going to happen? Well, that plant is probably going to die off, or it's going to find a way to change itself in order to survive. And this is what an adaptation is. An adaptation is a change to the way an organism looks or behaves that allows it to continue to survive in its particular environment. But keep in mind, this doesn't happen overnight. It's not magical. An adaptation is something that happens over many generations of a species or a type of organism. Carnivorous plants, all bearing adaptations, changes to survive. So for this lesson, we're going to focus on 5 different types of carnivorous plants. We're going to start with the Venus flytraps, then venture into exploring sundews, kind of looks like little hairy caterpillars, then take a look at these butterworts with the very beautiful flowers, and then 2 different types of pitcher plants, all carnivorous. They also share some of the very same traps. So for this lesson, we're going to take a look at the first 3 traps, the snap trap, the flying paper trap, and the pitfall trap. But I want you to write down those last 2. I want you to write down bladder trap and lobster pot trap. And hopefully that's a fun little research project for you after this lesson is over today. So, what do they all have in common? Why have they adapted or changed themselves? They all grow in nutrient-poor soil. It means that the soil is lacking foods or nutrients that these plants need in order to survive. So there's adaptations based on their lack of food where they are living in their particular environment. So let's start off with the Venus flytrap, the most common of all the carnivorous plants. Venus flytraps, commonly found in a little area in North Carolina. They grow in ground that's so wet, it's swampy, that all those good foods, those nutrients, get washed away. So this plant changing the way it takes in its food, taking it in from its leaf structure instead of from down below in the soil. The leaves are small, so I dropped a nickel down below this one so you can get an idea of how small it is, probably about the size of the tip of my finger, so not able to eat humans. Let's take a look at the structure of the trap itself. So great example of a snap trap. You can see here these little dark spots just under what looks like teeth of the Venus flytrap. These are nectar glands. We know that insects do fly to flowers to get nectar. That's how they take in their energy in order to survive. So there's plant saying, hey, I have a little nectar for you. The insect coming over to the plant, but it starts that little snap trap process. What we see here that look like whiskers, these are called trichomes. They're little hair-like structures that are inside the trap itself. the insect in there tapping at these trichomes or possibly bending it, which then does trigger that snap response to these trichomes. What happens though is the leaves don't totally squish and close that insect just yet. Put your palms together so you kind of have an idea of what I'm talking about. That insect hits those trichomes, the leaf closes over the insect, but not completely just yet. So make sure you still have some room in your hands there so you kind of get an idea. Those small insects then having that chance to escape, the small insects not providing enough nutrients that this plant would need to sustain itself or to keep going for anywhere from 4 to 10 days before it reopens and feeds again. So I want to share with you a very curious insect that gets caught inside the Venus flytrap. It's a bee. Bee's looking for some nectar, but watch what happens. Bee now the meal for the Venus flytrap. I want to show you this once again, but this time I want you to pay attention to the legs of the bee as it taps those trichomes, or those little hairs. What happens now is that leaf will continue to close over its insect, and what is inside the insect becomes the nutrients for the plant. Those nutrients, those foods, absorbed then into the leaf structure, feeding the plant. This is an image of a daddy longlegs. Its body structure inside here. What's going to happen is that insect, everything it has inside of it, becoming the food, this leaf will reopen in 4 to 10 days, and what's left behind is the exoskeleton, what's left from the outside of that insect. That exoskeleton is dried up now, and it either blows away or gets washed away, and that feeding process begins all over again. Sometimes if you've had a Venus flytrap as a plant at home or you've seen them up close, sometimes you'll notice that one of the leaves is darkened, and it's maybe because it has a fungus or a bacteria from that insect not being fully inside the leaf structure, but the other leaves will pick up for the plant and continue to feed it. Lacking that soil, lacking in nutrients, so this plant adapting itself in order to continue its survival. Another cool carnivorous plant family, the sundews. You can see here these droplets. To an insect, those droplets may look like water or may look like nectar, but those droplets are actually a very glue-like substance called mucilage or plant mucus. We know how we feel when we get a cold, so that sticky substance. If you've ever had a burn and you've opened an aloe plant, you know exactly what I mean, how sticky and thick that is. We have long used plant mucilage or mucus in a lot of the products. So it's been used in glue and marshmallows. So just think sticky. These droplets, almost acting like super glue then, when the insect comes into contact with it. So let's watch this insect trying to free itself from that plant mucilage. The harder this insect tries to pull away from that glue, it's actually tangling its own legs up into that structure, almost kind of creating its own web of this plant mucus. That insect eventually giving up, and what's inside that insect becoming the food, becoming the nutrients for this plant, absorbed into the leaf system. And it's believed that sundews have evolved from Venus flytraps. There's some that actually can twirl the top of their leaf over that insect, further giving it that little squish it needs for those nutrients to be absorbed into the plant mucilage. Butterworts, pretty little flowers. It's not the flowers that are part of the carnivorous trap, but the leaves themselves, these pinguiculas or butterworts. Our carnivorous plants do flower, but their flower is separate from their trap. They don't want to trap their pollinators. They want to be pollinated so they can continue their species, so they can make more seeds. So they keep their trap away from their flowers, not trapping their pollinators. So you can see our little butterwort here. Its flowers high above. It's the leaves itself that are that flypaper trap, just like with our sundews. So the insect coming into contact with the leaf, again, having that plant mucus on it, and then becoming stuck and eventually just decaying in its nutrients from inside of it, feeding the plant itself, almost like a flypaper trap. We do use those here at Longwood, so we can check to see if there's any insects that are harming our plants. So we'll put these cards out. These insects can't free themselves from that flypaper trap. Really cool stuff. Adaptations of carnivorous plants. Now we're going to take a look at two different types of pitcher plants. These are the Sarracenias that are commonly found throughout North America. Perhaps you've seen them. They have this really cool rolled leaf that has a little pool of water at the bottom, but that is its pitfall trap. Again, a plant that has a beautiful flower. These are terrestrial, which means they are ground dwelling. They have a root system. They live in the soil. In just a moment, we're going to take a look at a group that is not terrestrial. It is the way that this leaf is structured that helps form that pitfall trap. So this waxy area that we see here, this lip, there's nectar glands there. The insect, again, flying to that plant thinking that it's going to get something to eat. But right here, it's very slippery, very waxy, so that insect slipping down inside the trap itself. Down here, these little trichomes, or downward pointing hairs, are in a mixture of water and digestive enzymes like we have in our own bodies to break down food. That insect, starting here at the lip, looking for nectar, slips inside, continues down, 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 down. Insects will look for light to try and find their way out, but this hood over the top called an operculum kind of tricks them, so it's blocking a lot of that light. But the other purpose of this hood is to keep out too much water, because this plant doesn't want all those digestive enzymes being watered down. Here is a really cool picture from our gardens. This is nature versus nature. This very smart spider had figured out that this pitcher plant was taking its food, so it spun its web around that lip and from the hood of the plant to try and capture the insects before they fell into the pitcher plant and became its food. So here's a look at what the insect sees once they are down inside. Again, starting here at the lip, slipping down, down, down into those digestive juices, that pitfall trap. Very interesting plant and its adaptations. These are also pitcher plants, but these are tropical pitcher plants called nepenthes. These are plants that will make their way to the top of a rainforest to get the sunlight that they need in order to survive, as well as their nutrients. Tropical rainforests are really, 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 really dark down at the bottom of the rainforest. So a lot of plants finding a way to reach sunlight. These plants are known as epiphytes, which means they hang out on other plants in order to get what they need to survive. I want to share with you the look at our indoor collection of tropical pitcher plants so you can see what I mean. They're hanging out almost in basket form towards the top of one of our indoor areas here at Longwood. You can see they have these beautiful pitcher shapes, like a pitcher of water. They have these tendrils, or these little loops, that allow them to hook on to other vines to climb higher in the rainforest to get the sunlight that they need for photosynthesis. Starting off as one rolled leaf, so this then forming that pitcher structure, beautiful shape that we see here, but not planted in the soil. So epiphytic, kind of the opposite of a parasite, just hanging out to get what it needs, not draining anything from its host, but also not in the soil. These little tendrils that we see here, latching on to other vines to get higher and higher in the rainforest. Similar structure to the other that we saw, the Sarracenia. You could see here that very waxy lip, that hood to keep out extra water and to block that sunlight, that structure, that insect being forced down into pitfall trap. A lot of people will refer to these as monkey cups because in certain areas of the world, you will see monkeys taking the pitcher and drinking from it. Apparently, those digestive juices don't harm the monkeys at all, but you could see why it also has the name pitcher plant. I want to open one of these up so you could see what's left inside after this plant has digested those insects. This is from our indoor collection here at Longwood. So really, inside we have a lot of gnats, little small organisms that will go to the plant to feed. So what's going to pour out are the digestive enzymes, but you'll also see specks left on the leaf as well as in the plate. These, the exoskeletons of the insects that were basically dissolved by the plant thanks to those digestive enzymes. These plants relying on insects as their food because they're not getting the nutrients that they need from the soil. At this point in time in our lesson, my students usually have a ton of questions. So I'm going to back away right now so I could share my contact information with you. And please, please, please screenshot it, do whatever you can right now, take a picture of it so that we can be in touch. And I'd be more than happy and honored to answer whatever questions you have about carnivorous plants or any other plant questions. Thanks, everybody. Stay well. Questions? Ask me. Virtual field trips all together at longwoodgardens.org.